Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for May 8th, 2012. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is Ward 4 Alderman Tony Lafuente, elected in November of 2011 and inaugurated in January of this year. He makes his third appearance right here on Greater Somerville. He's a business owner in the city. He and his family make their home in the Winter Hill District of Ward 4. It is my pleasure to welcome him back to the hot set of Greater Somerville.
Thank you, Joe. It's nice to be back.
3 appearances.
Well,
how did that happen?
I don't know. I think you need to check your schedules. You're inviting me way too often, I think.
You know who's going to get jealous?
Who's that?
Alderman Bill Roach.
Why is that?
Alderman Bill Roach gets an invite from me to come back and talk whenever he wants to. And Alderman Roach accuses me of only inviting him during the month of July when no one else will come on or everyone else is on vacation.
Well, I think what you ought to do is invite him in April.
And that's gone by, so we'll invite him for next April.
Well, no, September, when everybody's back.
Alderman Bill Roach, you know you're welcome here at the hot set anytime you want. So, you now have a seat at the Horseshoe. You want to give your constituents a little update? Is it everything you imagined, or is it a whole lot more?
Well, it's really an honor, first of all, to represent, all my neighbors in Ward 4. And it's very gratifying, to be there and actually be part of the process. I don't think it feels any different. A lot of people ask me, so how's it feel? And it doesn't really feel any different. There's a lot of work that has to be done and that we are been doing. A lot more work that has to be done. I get an enormous amount of emails, phone calls. So that whole perception of, you're an alderman and you're at the Horseshoe and at City Hall, that really doesn't do much for me because I'm really focused on the work. I introduce more orders than most people. I've got another 13 going in tomorrow. And
tomorrow night's Board of Aldermen
right,
meeting.
We have a Board of Aldermen meeting. And these are things that really pertain to the ward. They're nuts and bolts types of issues that people call me on, and every Sunday I take a ride through the entire ward and just look at things that need to get done, and I put them in. I don't put in everything because I call 311 many times, especially in off weeks, and to make sure that things are getting done. So whatever's up for that week, then I put in. But it's my colleagues on the board have been absolutely tremendous in their support, teaching me. It's a very long process. It's a difficult process. Parliamentary procedure is very difficult to learn, and I'm still learning. But everyone on the board and in the mayor's office have been absolutely great in making sure that I'm learning things that I'm supposed to be learning and helping me pushing things that are important to me and Ward 4 to the table and getting them through. So it's been a wonderful first 5 months, and we're really delighted that we're able to do the work that we're doing for Ward 4.
Now, as a keen observer of politics in this city, Tony, I mean,
yes,
we've known each other for a while.
We have. You think that's the reason why I get invited so often, Joe?
Probably that, and the speculation out there that Ward 4 is going to be getting a lion's share of goodie baskets over the next couple of years. I would like to say and flatter you that it's because Alderman Lafuente has been pushing, but is there any truth to the rumor that between you, who live in Ward 4, and Alderman Bill White, who lives in Ward 4, and Alderman Dennis Sullivan, who lives in Ward 4, and the mayor, who lives in Ward 4,
right.
Is there any truth to that rumor that you guys are going to be at the head of the list when they hand out the goodie bags?
Well, it's. I'm going to.
Don't take it too seriously, Tony.
I'm going to tell you. We all lived there before I got elected.
Okay.
And
fair enough.
things are what they are, and the only goodie bag I want is to make sure that Ward 4 gets what it's got coming to it.
There you go.
And that's and I'm gonna work very, very hard to make sure that happens. I mean, we need, there are things as simple as street signs, to the rat issue, which has become very, very prominent in Precinct 2. To things like the absentee landlords that are just absolutely allowing our neighborhoods to be destroyed. And I'm taking that on as a personal issue that needs to get resolved, because everybody in Ward 4 deserves the quality of life that anybody else in the city has.
Tony, that's the second time that you've mentioned it, quality of life, and it really does come down to the nuts and bolts of daily living in a neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot going on in Ward 4, and I make no bones about it. I'm always asking, and every chance I get when I meet with the mayor, I mention things that the ward needs, and he's been tremendous in making commitments to Ward 4 that have not been previously made, just because they weren't asked for. And so other areas of the city have gotten more than their fair share because we lagged behind, and I'm not going to let that happen. And I will say that Mayor Curtatone has been nothing but a delight to work with. He understands the problems in Ward 4. We're going to be walking Broadway together, meeting with the merchants. One of the things I want to do is start a business association on Winter Hill, which we desperately need. These merchants need to talk to one another. We need to clean up the area. The storefronts need to. There's just a lot to do. And the mayor.
Excuse me, Tony. Very similar issues in Ward 5. I mean, there's been a lot of chatter about Magoon Square, and I've been an advocate for many years now. Is that folks at home know that I run a neighborhood association. But the neighborhood association only has so much they can do when it comes to the private property owners in Magoon Square and the merchants in Magoon Square and the landlords in the Magoon Square. Those folks have to do it for themselves. And some of them don't like me hear me saying it, but stop putting your hand out to City Hall and start doing stuff on your own, and then go to the city and say, here's our plan. Can you help us?
Right. Well, I chair the Housing and Community Development Committee, and we had a committee meeting a couple of weeks ago where we talked about Magoon Square. Alderman O'Donovan actually brought that up, and so we had a hearing on it.
Somebody was listening.
And unlike Magoon Square, where you have many vacancies, as Alderman O'Donovan pointed out, we in Winter Hill don't have many vacancies. Our problem is
the stretch of Broadway you're talking about.
Well, it's a very lateral, retail space, number one. So to get from point A to point B, it takes a while. Then we have dilapidation. Of storefronts.
Buildings.
That's what really kills Broadway, and that's what we're going to try to change. And I was delighted last week at the Resistat meeting. The mayor has committed to transfer some money from other community development monies to put about $100,000 into Broadway and Temple, which hopefully will spring the that sort of sense of renewal, if you will, in that area.
And at least it's decent looking to the eye.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me just go back to one thing. You had mentioned that Alderman O'Donovan was talking about the number of vacancies. I'm a firm believer, being an old banker, I'm a firm believer in updated data. And I happen to be doing a tour of the Magoon Square area on Somerville Open Studios this weekend, and we now have 5 working permits within those vacant storefronts. So, some people argue about the numbers, what constitutes vacancy. If you have a working permit in a storefront, that indicates to me economic vitality. Somebody's doing something to make that storefront viable again.
The issue that Alderman O'Donovan brings out, and it's a valid one, is that there's too many transient businesses, and they come in, they don't make it, they go out. And he's right. In Magoon Square, we have that problem.
Yeah.
So something needs to happen there.
Is there a solution being put forth by Alderman O'Donovan?
Well, no, I think we're looking
Right.
for answers, and it comes to my committee, and we need to figure it out. But there's a combination of things. I think the build out of Max Pack, I think that will help some. If we're ever lucky to get the green line, which we can't count on, but if we do, that's
years out.
That happens by default.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
with a stop in that area, development and economic development just happens by default, just as it did in Davis Square.
Well, we're gonna spend some time talking about Winter Hill, and I guess to get my plug in there, the neighbors and some of the merchants in Magoon Square fought for the stimulus money that was coming in. So $2.5 million worth of stimulus money in Magoon Square, a brand new CVS, an updated Trump Park, a new passive park at Hanson, Max Pack, a Green Line stop at Lowell Street. All of those things were to move it along a little bit.
Right.
But that's not the final answer. The final answer to me is now it's up to the business associations or the business owners and the property owners and the merchants that are in there of coming up with a plan and saying, here's how we'd like to move it forward. What help can the city give us?
Right.
So on Winter Hill, you were mentioning that you've got some funding that may come in. But really, Tony, that's not the end of the story. To pump the money in, you then have to have somebody actively managing.
Yeah. Well, as I said, that's just a springboard
Right.
to hopefully make some things happen. Because in all fairness, unlike Magoon Square, we don't have the vacancies.
Yeah.
We have very few vacancies. Our problem is different. I think what happens in an area like Broadway, when you can sort of initiate a springboard, all of a sudden storefronts begin to get freshened up, new paint, new signs. It brings in different type of tenant, more creative tenant.
Right.
And all of a sudden you see the business climate change. And that's something that happens, over a few
Gradually,
years. It's
sure.
not something that happens, because in order for any vacancy to happen, either a business has to sell or they go down. We haven't had a lot of businesses go under, in all fairness, in Winter Hill. It's just that they're not keeping up with the times. Now, I've heard things like, we're not going to do our storefront because if we do, then our taxes are going to go up. And so these are things that we need to deal with and encourage the business associations, which I would like to create.
That's right.
To make sure that that happens.
Right.
Because then they sort of push each other.
And for the correct information to be out there for those property owners and merchants.
But the other thing is, the mayor just put out Somerset, which we approved, which is a wonderful plan. I mean, it's a 20-year long-range plan for the city. And along with that, I introduced an order 2 weeks ago where I asked the administration to look at a branding policy.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that businesses aren't going to come to Somerville. We have to go out and get them.
We have to be salespeople.
We have to be salespeople. We have to be proactive. We need to go out and get them to come in. And I'm not talking about, the Googles of the world
Right.
or the Gens. I'm talking
Right.
about startups or expansions. There's all kinds of small businesses in Boston that would do very well in Somerville. We need to go. Are you looking to open up another retail operation or another restaurant? Come to Somerville.
During the mayor's business town meeting that was down at the, not the Somerville, Davis Square Theater, beside the new saloon, Ken Kelly's place, he had spoken about that, and he had said, that he and a lot of the folks from the chamber and the business people from the community go out and they visit. But I think his focus was really more on the, the higher end or the larger employee. But your point, which is a very good point, is that those small businesses that are out there that make up the vast majority of business in Somerville need to be marketed to. They need to be told how good Somerville is in a business environment.
Right.
Recently there were some things that were said. I'm not going to go back to Magoon Square, but they were talking about the business environment in the different squares. And I guess my feeling is, I don't know where some of these people studied marketing and advertising 101, but you don't lead off talking about your local business district by saying how bad the parking is, by how bad the rodent problem is, by the vacancies, by the lack of initiative by the city.
Right.
That's just not good common sense. So your environment at Winter Hill is you're going to take the bull by the horns, and you're going to try to get these guys to form a business association to advocate for themselves and to be ambassadors to the outside world, saying, I got a great location on Broadway on Winter Hill.
Right.
You guys should come in.
Well, and I think that's the responsibility of, you know, a combination of the city as well as the business folks. And I think a business community should always be together in whatever area you're in. There should always be an association,
Right?
Because on Broadway, we have Winter Hill Bank, we have Citizens Bank. They're pretty large, so maybe they sort of take the lead. And then you have the Melissa's Pizza, Leone's Pizza,
The more
Bar,
established folks.
Broadway
Yep.
Market. You have these smaller retailers who may not be as proactive as somebody like a Sandra McGoldrick from
And may not have the time to do it.
and may not have the time
Right.
because they're running their small businesses,
Right.
and it's very, very difficult to run a small business. But a combination of the two, and if a good marketing plan is put in place, and we're able to go after, then it brings people in.
Got
And
it.
we see it. That I'm sure when you were in business, you saw it. You go to trade shows,
Yep.
you go to conventions, and you see community development departments, planning departments, mayors. They go and they try to attract different companies and businesses to come
That's right.
to their municipalities,
That's
and
absolutely
we need
right.
to do the same. And I think the mayor's, summer plan actually does that, and it creates that environment that we can now say, you know what, this is our plan for the city.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful plan.
Speaking of plans, I'm sorry, I'm going to open up the phone lines because I heard from two people from Ward 4 who said to me, make sure you asked Alderman Lafuente to give us an update about the Star Market site on Broadway, which I think is a very fair question. It's the largest parcel within that business district. So I'm going to open up the phone lines. Give us 2 seconds, if you can, because I want to let Alderman Lafuente talk about the latest about the Star Market site.
Right. So last week we had the ResiStat meeting, and the mayor gave us an update. Star Market site is owned by a private developer, and he is now suing the city because the city did not grant him the permit to allow Ocean State Job Lot to go in,
Okay.
which the highest percentage of residents don't want. We're all in agreement that it would be best to have a food-based development there. I know that attending the meetings at the time, a couple of years ago, the city really wanted to get a good development going and was willing to work with the developer to happen that. In other words, maybe a higher dense development, but yet smaller stores.
Multiple storefronts, but higher buildings.
Exactly.
Yep.
Which makes sense. The city gets more revenue because there's more square footage, and the tenants get sort of an array of retailers that really begin to describe what the ward is. Because Ward 4 is, although very traditional, it's changing. And, people are talking about having a Starbucks, they're talking about Trader Joe's, they're talking about a vegetable store. There are many, many different ideas. But the fact of the matter is that the owner did not like what the message he got, so he took the city to court. It's in litigation, and the mayor told us last week that he believes that in the next couple of months it will go to a hearing.
Okay.
So that's where we are. And
Okay.
until a judge makes a decision and renders that decision, there's really not much we can do.
And I bring that up, Tony, and I'm glad you're giving the city and the people in the city as well as Ward 4, because we see this big site
Right.
on Winter Hill. People are blaming City Hall. They're blaming your predecessor. They're blaming you. The point of the matter, though, is that is a private piece of property.
Right.
That the owner did not like what the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Somerville
The planning
said.
board. Planning board.
The planning board said to him about the reuse of that site.
Right.
Plain and simple. I would assume that if he came back in with a Trader Joe's, might be open by now.
Well, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I went to all the meetings. This was back in 2010. And had he gone with what the vision is, Summer Vision isn't just something that was grasped from the air. I mean, the mayor chose a group of folks, Somervillians, to help him develop this summer vision, which is a wonderful plan, long-term plan for the city.
It's to craft the plan as we move forward.
It's the first time we have a general direction in this city. We've never had it before. That sets precedence.
The general direction in the past in this city has always been Wild West.
Yeah.
You know, build as high as you want, build onto somebody else's property, you know, reuse it for whatever you need. I mean, we ran into it, back to Magoon School, we ran into it when we had a psychic open up. There was nothing on the books that said you can't open up. So how do you control that? Right. Let's go into, so that's your update on Star Market. It's in litigation. The mayor's expecting something to happen within the next couple of months. Right. You mentioned your ResiStat meetings. You're fresh off of those from last week?
Last Tuesday, a week ago today.
Yeah.
We had about 80 people there, a little bit over 80 people. It was probably one of the best attended ResiStat meetings from what I heard from the administration. And the mayor basically laid out, the plan. We talked about crime. The crime statistics in general have come down. Some have gone up, and most of it is actually down throughout the city, which it's always nice to hear. Talked about Star Market. Talked a little bit about Assembly Square. They broke ground last week.
Yep.
Ward 4 is going to be getting some benefits from it. There's going to be some a couple of raised intersections on Shore Drive.
Traffic calming measures.
Traffic calming measures. There's going to be a footbridge that will go from 10 Hills into the mall. Some infrastructure construction, all done by the developer. So Ward 4 will be getting some benefits.
And it's basically public safety measures for that neighborhood that's immediately adjacent.
All public safety. So we talked about in terms of Winter Hill what we're going to do, and he announced there that he is going to infuse quite a bit of money to hopefully get it going. And then there was a lot of questions from folks. There was questions about obviously I've been taking on the absentee landlord issue.
Yep.
There was questions about that. There were questions about the rodent problem. There was questions about local neighborhood things, which really makes up the ward. So it was a very good meeting, and I think folks, from what I heard the next day, there were people on the corner of Temple and Broadway talking about all the positive things that are coming up. He brought in the plan about possibly taking over Foss Park and doing a sort of a youth activity center there, but just
within the park itself.
Within the park, didn't go into it very much, but just put
it's
it
something
out
to put out there. And I mean, the mayor and yourself are going to have to listen to what the residents are saying.
Absolutely.
Either they think it's a good idea to put a community center for youth in the park, or they think it's a lousy idea.
But I mean, I guess what I'm saying, what I wanted to say, Joe, is the mayor recognizes that Ward 4 needs some attention. I've made him aware of many things. Many of them he already knew, and was working on them. And now we want to fast track some of them.
Yeah.
And
get behind Ward 5.
Well, no. Ward 4. Ward 4 needs to get their share, and I'm going to fight for that.
Well, arm wrestling for that one.
But he's been incredibly sensitive to the issues of Ward 4, and I think we're going to get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
And I've put in probably close to 100 board orders since I've been inaugurated, and everything is passed. All the departments that are, that the board orders pertain to have moved quickly on them. They're being very, very good to Ward 4, and I just want to keep it that way. That's what I was voted for.
The only, I talked to a lot of people right across the city, and the only thing that I've heard expressing disappointment, and it's becoming louder and louder the more people understand it, is the fact that the Green Line is now delayed.
Right.
I know the mayor thinks it's a good thing to get at least 2 stops in the city to get as he says, at least while this governor is there, to get the shovel in the ground. There are those of us, and I joke about it with the mayor because he calls me a purist and says, you want it all, and I say, damn right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want it all. So, Gilman Street Gilman Square stop is in Ward 4. It's got to be a little.
Actually, no, it's in Ward 3. But it's
You're on the border.
it's
Sorry.
across
You're right
the
on
street is
border.
Ward 4. Yeah.
Medford Street. One
Right.
side of Medford Street is 3, the
Exactly.
other side is 4.
Yeah, yeah.
But where are most of the people going to come from?
Ward 4.
There you go. There you go. So you're going to hear it.
And we're working very hard. And the mayor, because we talked about the Green Line extension in Resistat, and he made it very clear that we cannot let up
Right.
on the state, and we need to get the shovel in the ground while Deval Patrick is governor. Because if you get a Republican governor in there, we lose it for another 20
Well,
years.
we should make a deal with the governor. We'll buy more of his book if he pushes the Green Line along.
I
But
think they just need to get the Leechmere station across the
Shifted,
street.
right.
And as soon as that's done, I
Right.
think that'll
Right.
move things along.
Right. But speaking of moving things along, I mean, we got probably about 3 minutes, I think. But moving things along, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and I'll get in trouble for this, which is fine. In your ward, you have a couple of places that are identified by a sign. So it says, "Welcome to Winter Hill." Right? We're traveling on Broadway in a westerly direction, and we have those beautiful wooden signs with the carved gold letters. It says, "Welcome to Winter Hill." Right? You have another one that says Gilman Square. Do you know we don't have one of those in Magoon Square?
Well, you know what? And it's funny. It's funny you say that because
I'm hitting up the committee chairman here.
because in about another month and a half, we're going to have a wonderful banner program up Broadway in in Winter Hill because we need to. That's part of the whole process of creating movement and
Right.
And color and
Right.
we'd like to do better signage actually
Right.
In Winter
Right.
Hill, which is all part of a perception. You're creating a perception. Well, you need to talk to your alderman.
I am going to get in trouble because I've already talked to the mayor about it, and I've talked to a couple of people in City Hall, and they say, "Joe, we know you've asked for it in the past. We know that it should have been included in the Magoon Square redo. How it got by us, we don't know, but I'm not going to let up." You're the one that gave me the Q word. We're not going to let up, so I'm going to keep asking the mayor, "Where's my Magoon Square sign?"
Yeah.
So speaking to somebody in City Hall today, I threatened him. I said, if I don't get it, late spring, early summer, I'm going to start graffitiing the buildings. "Welcome to Magoon Square."
Oh my God, Joe.
I don't think it'll happen.
DPW doesn't need more work.
No, they
They're
don't.
already busy as they can be.
We're going to give you the last word in terms of anything else you want to talk to because we got about a minute left here.
Okay.
You got Ward 4 constituents and they've opened their arms and they're flooding you with requests.
I'm very engaged with the residents. I'm out there. I'm seeing them. People are, delighted that I answer their emails very quickly. Their phone calls. People call me, and most of the time, if I'm not in the meeting, I answer the phone. I have one phone dedicated to my alderman duties, and it rings. I pick it up unless I'm in a meeting or doing something.
What's that number?
Yeah. But it's wonderful to be able to do something for people in Ward 4. And as I told the mayor after I got elected, he called me in the office and asked me, "So what about Ward 4?" And I told him Ward 4 needs everything. And the folks in Ward 4 didn't elect me to sign citations and vote on resolutions. They voted me to take care of the issues that the ward needs and to make sure that the ward begins to look good and maintained looking good so that whoever is moving in is a good neighborhood person, a person who's going to be vested in the city, build families here, and restart that whole process again.
Go to it.
Thank you. It was nice being here again, Joe. Thank you for
Alderman
inviting me.
Tony Lafuente has been our guest tonight. As always, Somerville, stay safe, stay tuned, and stay informed. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.